What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with some more content. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel, all right? So, I seen a press conference between Terrence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez yesterday. I saw the interview with Piers Morgan. I seen some other interviews with the two of them at the press conference. And I mean, I don't really feed too much into the press conference thing. I know a lot of people do. A lot of people like to base everything off the body language and stuff like that. I don't, but I thought it was important enough to at least make some content on and talk about a few things that I observed, noticed throughout watching the press conference. Now, as far as Piers Morgan and that interview, the interview is pretty long. I don't know if it was like 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, or something like that, but the interview is pretty long, and it's a sit down, it's not like a direct face off where one is going after the other. There's really no animosity between these two. This two great fighters that actually have a lot of respect for each other. Like you can tell, Piers Morgan did ask a lot of questions, personal questions, questions that I've already heard between both fighters about their upbringing and then different experiences they had outside of the ring. And I'm gonna just let you know, like these guys have done a ton of interviews, especially with like Crawford recently, like because he's been doing a ton of interviews on both boxing and mixed martial arts based platforms. And I think those are some of the interviews that you should watch as opposed to this one. This one was more like, okay, Canelo, you got Crawford together doing an interview. Pierce is not a boxing guy, you know what I mean? He's not really going into detail about like certain events in their careers, maybe some personal experience things that you can actually do research on and Google and stuff and find on their Wikipedia pages, but not anything that any boxing fan that follows the both of them wouldn't already know. Okay. It's a very friendly interview. These guys are laughing, I mean, they're talking competitively, but they're showing so much respect towards each other. Now, as far as the press conference, totally different, right? Totally different. First of all, and this is very, very important to me, Turkey Al is running the presser. Okay. I watched the entire thing. All right. There's clips around. I bounced around a few of the clips, but I watched the entire thing. And it starts off with Turkey coming out and sitting at a table that is on Canelo's side, because it's two sides, right? It's a person that's doing an interview, and then you have Canelo on one side, you got Crawford over here. Turkey comes out and he expresses his disappointment that he's like, I don't want to sit on this side. I want to sit on the Crawford side. So to me, like, I understand that Turkey is a boxing fan and he's doing a lot of this stuff that he does is because he's a fan first, but he's directly involved. In fact, he's changed the game, in the last 2 years, right? And I understand that he's with Crawford. He has a better relationship with Crawford, and I get that and I respect that. That's fine. Um, I'm not going to tell the guy how to run his shows, but I think the professional way is to be, professional to both fighters, because at the end of the day, these are two great fighters. I know they had some back and forth with him and Canelo at some point as far as fighting, taking another fights, fighting Crawford, fighting Benavidez in the past. But in this situation, I thought it was really awkward with Turkey and putting it out there early, like, why am I sitting on this side? I want to sit on that side with Crawford. So he was disappointed with the staff and where he was seated. And I thought it just took some of the energy out the room right away because it just made things very awkward, just my opinion, I love Turkey. I love what he's doing for the sport, and I hope he continues doing what he's doing. But I think in a situation where, two fighters, and you're running the show and you're putting these fights together, you're making these big fights happen. I just think that you don't want to give the fans a feel that you are rooting for one over the other, not on that level. I know he has in the past with certain fights, but it just looks like, the favoritism was just a little too strong at this presser, and I think it should be said, I understand, again, I know a lot of people are working with Turkey now. I just, it just was too clear. It was too obvious. Canelo took advantage of that, and there was a back and forth. There was a back and forth between Crawford. Crawford said he's taking those belts. Crawford says what he's usually say: "I'm gonna win the fight." Cool. No disrespect with either, but at some point, I like what Canelo was like. Turkey's gonna be so mad when you lost, and that's what I mean. He's capitalizing off the favoritism of Turkey Al-Sheikh towards Crawford, and I think that was perfect when he said that. But besides that, to be honest, there wasn't much and I wasn't expecting much in the presser because at the end of the day, there's no animosity between these two, and these two are, again, their careers are already solidified. Obviously, it's a much bigger fight for Crawford because if Crawford wins, this would elevate his legacy even further, and it would for Canelo too, but not in a way that it does for Crawford. Like Crawford expressed in the Piers Morgan interview and several interviews leading up to this presser how much of a fight this win, if he is to win, how much it would do for his legacy. You know what I'm saying? So it is bigger. And it doesn't matter if you think Crawford's going to win. It doesn't matter if we all know I'm a Crawford fan. But at the end of the day, we got to be honest with ourselves and say this does much more for Crawford's legacy, especially because he's moving up 2 divisions to fight Canelo Alvarez. The face-off at the end. I thought Crawford had the advantage in the first face-off when Canelo beat Skull. You know what I mean? Because at that time, Crawford just looked way more confident in that first face-off. Way more confident. He looked taller. I don't know what's up with these guys, what shoes they're wearing. I don't know if Canelo got a different pair of shoes. I don't know if Crawford had a different pair of shoes in their first face-off, but Crawford looked tremendous, like a lot taller than the Canelo in the Skull face-off. And size-wise, he looked like he was nearly equal in size outside of the neck. Shoulders, everything else looked like it was near equal, if not equal. In this presser, not only was Canelo barely like taller or at least even, but he looked bigger, and he looked more confident. Whereas Terrence Crawford looked like it was his moment. He finally got his moment. I know people like to say the Spence fight was the biggest fight, which it was. It was his moment to prove to the world that he was better than Spence. I thought they were equals going into that fight. You know what I mean? Yeah, Spence might have got a little bit more money, or I don't know. I don't remember. No. I'm talking about perception, not money, but perception going into the fight. People thought that Spence was the A side, right? But I thought they were equals going into that fight. Whereas in this fight, Canelo seems more relaxed when he talks, the way he answers questions. He doesn't seem any different, even though this is going to be his biggest payday in his career. It's not his biggest fight. You know what I mean? It's just another big fight for him. He's been here so many times. And he's fought people that people didn't feel that he would win against. You know what I mean? So he's been here so many times, where Crawford, I think Spence was really the only fight. I have to be honest. That's the only fight where people really question whether or not he was going to win or not. There's some people that might have thought like Madrimov was going to pull off the upset and stuff like that, but, or Kell Brook or, some of these guys. But nah, Spence was the only fighter that Crawford felt like people was like 50-50 going into that fight. Canelo just seems very relaxed. You can just tell the difference. You can tell who is the A side. You can tell who's more relaxed, who's the biggest star between the two. You can tell, where it feels like Crawford is just getting his moment right now, for real, for real. And that's just based off questions and how they're answered. That's based off body language. But you can see that Canelo has a lot of respect for Crawford. You can tell different from Munguia or Belenga or Skull or, you know, all of those recent fights. It just felt like Canelo was just heavy. Like, let's just get this over with. John Ryder, like, I'm here. We signed the fight. We're going to do our face off. We're going to do our press conference. And then I'm just going to prepare for the fight. Canelo has respect, but he's been there. So that's my takeaways from the presser. Um, None of this changes how I feel. I know people are gonna go into like, well, Crawford seemed, you know, Canelo seemed more confident, or Crawford didn't seem as confident. That's cool. One thing I noticed with Crawford is that he's always friendly and more professional in the pressers leading up to the buildup of the fight. I noticed that with Spence, more friendlier, Madrimov more friendly, and some other fights before that. Uh, the actual final presser before the weigh-in and the weigh-in itself, he's in a different mode. He's angry. He doesn't seem as friendly. He doesn't smile as much. In the face-off, no handshaking, like none of that really most of the time. His energy is different, so as friendly as they will be at this point, because we're still months away from this fight, I expect a different energy from Crawford on the week of the fight, because a lot of these fighters, including himself, always say, like, I'm cool now, but the week of the fight, I gotta build myself to hate this guy. Like, I gotta build myself to be in fight mode mentally. We're still months away. He even said, when Piers Morgan asked him about weight, and he was like, well, or maybe not Piers Morgan, but because I watched a bunch of interviews, but I know one of the Ring Magazine interviews, he was like, well, I'm staying fit. They asked about his weight. He was like, I'm staying fit. I think he said something. He's like, I'm at 155 right now, which I don't believe, but he was like, right now I'm not in camp. I'm just staying in shape. Like, I'm staying fit, and he's not even in camp right now. You know what I mean? So, uh, yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought Canelo had the advantage this time in the face-off, you know, but I don't think that really matters when it comes to the actual fight. Um, I think in this fight, though, overall, Crawford would have to be, and this may be the very first time, because I know Spence was his biggest fight, but it wasn't his biggest challenge. Crawford might have to be at his, I believe Crawford will be the very best that he can be. Um, I do think that Crawford is a better boxer. I've always said that. I do think power is going to be a factor. I know people talk about size, but I think about power. Because Canelo is a good counterpuncher. Canelo's been fighting at the division for a while. Canelo's been fighting bigger guys, yada, yada, yada. I do believe Crawford's the most skilled. But there's one concern I have for Crawford. Is one concern, and the concern is based off what has happened this week, and it's very important. Does Crawford feel pressured now from having to fight a certain kind of fight to entertain and please the viewers? And I mean that based on what Turki Al-Sheikh and his comments lately about not running. Now, I wasn't expecting running from Crawford. I always said that he's going to do a lot of touching. We're going to see some things that we've seen Bivol do to Canelo. We're going to see some things that Crawford has done to guys like Felix Diaz or Victor Postal. Fights where, he was a little more cautious, all right? Doing more work with the lead hand, not really throwing too many power shots and moving, but touching. So he responded and said, yes, I'm going to be doing more touching. He said that no one's going to tell me how to fight my fight. And this is responding to Turki saying that we don't want any more runners. But being that this is getting promoted so heavy, not just from boxing, but from TKO, the WWE, the UFC, Dana White. It's going to be on Netflix. Like, there's a lot of pressure that comes on having a super fight, right? And this is your first super fight, right? They're marketing this as the biggest fight in a decade, right? Since Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, right? What does that mean for you? Are you just trying to win or are you looking to please? I think for Crawford's sake, I hope he doesn't run, but I hope he doesn't feel like he needs to please the crowd neither. You know what I mean? As a boxer, to win the fight, you got to fight in a way that it's going to win you the fight. Not totally just there to please and entertain the people. You can't trade with Canelo. That would be stupid, you know? Not saying you can't try to hurt the man, but you can't just sit there and slug it out because you want to have a great fight for the crowd. You know you're the better boxer. You got to fight like you're the better boxer and look for those opportunities. You got to find that median. And I know people are going to read the comment. I mean, look in the comments and twist whatever I'm saying right now. You got to find a median, something realistic that you can do where you can box, counter, slip, keep it moving, but box, throw punches, let your hands go. Not do what Charlo did, not do what Skull did. But you ain't Triple G neither. You're not going to walk down Canelo like you did in the first fight. You know what I mean? Unless you gas him out. You got to do, I think, what Floyd did, what Bivol did in order to win those fights. Those are a little bit more realistic for me when it comes to Crawford. I don't think Crawford is Floyd. I don't think Crawford is Bivol neither. But I think he can use some of the tools that they use to win those fights against Canelo. Some of them. As far as Canelo, we already know what Canelo do. And I would be very surprised if Crawford is able to get out of this fight without at least getting hurt at some point. Because Canelo is such a big counterpuncher. And even though Crawford is very good defensively, yeah, I don't know if he's going to just counter everything, and slip everything. I don't know. Anyway, that is my first views on this fight. All right. I will be doing a ton of content on this fight. I will be talking about the strengths of Crawford, the strengths of Canelo, similar to what I've done with other super fights in the past, including Crawford against Spence. I will be making numerous videos on this fight and leading up to the main event out in September. All right. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please subscribe. Please hit the thumbs up if you enjoy the content and share your thoughts. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.